Right then, okay. I changed the title slightly to reflect current state of affairs, as in looking at the past and looking at the future. So I thought I'd start with a quick quote from someone called G.K. Adams. I have no idea who they are, but it was a quote that sort of said something to me here. Yes, we have done a lot of stuff already on RDSS, and we've started off a project with a large number of consultants, subcontractors, framework, and we have tried things and we've rejected things, and we're now where we are. But a slight step backwards though, to start where we started from. We started from the sector telling us they needed something. They needed something for their research data. Research data that is supporting a publication at the time of publication, so the underpinning data. And we came up with a set of priorities, and the first priority, obviously, research data, the output, the thesis, the data itself, the research data, the software, the code, provenance, all that sort of made their stuff. But also, another big gap that the sector told us about was preservation. Not many people had preservation systems when we first started doing this. And so we prioritized and came up with our requirements, and we ended up with a situation whereby we had a series of repositories, and a series of preservation systems and reporting systems, and we tried to stick them all together. And I click that and nothing happens. Oh, let's try that again. We looked a bit further into the requirement, and the more we looked into it, we decided that because of various requirements such as working across institutions, you have, for instance, a research team that works across institutions, requirements whereby you have consortia, requirements whereby you have whole underdeveloped countries needing a system, a solution, that multi-tenancy was the way forward. As has been mentioned several times, thank you, Emma, today, researcher experience in many systems has been, let's just say, not as good as it could be. We have actually had a user experience and consultancy, Augusta, working with us on this, and they did some user testing. And suffice to say that nothing scored particularly highly on the user testing. Also be mentioned is taking the burden off the user, the semi-automatic workflows, making it happen without you having to think about it, without you having to be a preservation expert or a repository expert. Very important though, is it should be cost effective and sustainable. Again, this is something that's come up several times in our discussions today. There's no point in having something if you can't afford it. And even if you can afford it once, continuing to afford it in a situation whereby there's increasing demands for data storage and so on, and with less and less money, this is particularly important. We also had a requirement for it to be as open as possible and as closed as necessary. That's that thing's banded around quite a lot. We wanted to make sure that if we were doing all this research and testing and trying things out on behalf of the sector, that we made as much of that learning as open as possible so other people could benefit from it. And you wouldn't just be tied to a particular proprietary system. That's a nasty word, proprietary, isn't it? And reporting tools. People needed tools to find out what they had, how much it's costing them, where it's going, who's looking at it, all that stuff, to report on the impact and so on. So those are also particularly important as well. And we wanted a better name. I mean, RDSS, it just doesn't trip off the tongue, does it? It's just a working title. So if any of you have got some thoughts about a great name for a system that has repositories, reporting, preservation, see me after school. There might be a bottle of Prosecco in it. We can't afford champagne. Prosecco is about as far as we can go. But so yeah, we want a better name. Having come up with these requirements, then we face a number of challenges. Making something truly multi-tenanted. That sounds like it could be simple. It's not. There are all sorts of challenges involved, especially when you're doing something in terms of the cloud-based solution. Something that's truly multi-content. Again, some discussions we've had today about current data formats and future data formats and old data formats that are going obsolete and things we haven't heard of yet. Making something truly multi-content, that's difficult to do. Having a shared data model, if these things are going to be interoperable, that's one of the prerequisites, obviously, is be able to have bits talk to each other in the same language, the same data model. It needs to be interoperable. You need to plug it into your university systems, your other institution systems. Sustainable, we mentioned that as well, and a much improved user experience. These are all the major challenges we face. They're part of our requirements, they're also part of our challenges. And we came up with this as the conceptual solution for the disk repository stroke preservation system. I'm calling it disk repository stroke preservation system because I'm trying to avoid using the RDSS word these days. We need a better word, a better name. So this conceptually is what the whole thing consists of. We have the core infrastructure, true multi-tenanted core infrastructure, multi-tenanted admin, discovery interfaces. We can find out what's there. We have the Scholarly Com systems interfaces. All these APIs, open APIs, so people can plug in as and when required. Host systems, so you can plug it into your HR system, your CRIS, plug it into whatever. CRIS systems as well. Preservation systems, reporting storage, multiple user interfaces, multiple tenant interfaces. The situation whereby you might have a single repository for 5 or 6 different areas within your institution. So multiple interfaces and so on. And so that's the vision. And so how far have we actually got with this vision? Oh, sorry, I didn't mention the drivers. Chris mentioned those earlier on slightly. The sector needed this stuff. They told us they needed stuff, but also they said we had drivers in the form of research funders saying, thou shalt publish the data underpinning research and make it available for 10 years from last access. A question arose earlier on, what we're going to do at the end of 10 years. Well, I suspect you'll be keeping it because someone will have accessed it. I mean, even now there are those guerrilla groups of researchers out there who are planning their attack on your repository to make sure they access the data, so you've got to keep it. We've invested more than 5 million quid over 2 years. We had William's little thought experiment about how much have you invested. Now, I sat down in the first go because, as in, are you going to invest less? Because we've made that enormous upfront investment. I can't see us ever being in a position to make a similar upfront investment of 5 million quid over the next few years. We will produce a sustainable system. There will be income from the system, but we've put that money in. So there's a major amount of stuff going there. And the other driver as well, obviously, is the open access driver, which we're all familiar with. So I won't stick about. I won't dwell on that at all. On the history of development, we had a lot of people, pilots involved. Some come, some gone. These are the current pilots. Some of them whom are here. We have Elena over there. We have Emma over there. We have others as well, Francis as well. So these are all people involved as pilots. Now, these people were chosen because they had different maturities, they had different use cases, they had different file types. So all those discussions we had earlier on this morning about Emma's case study with her videos and so on, that's one of the reasons why we chose her. It's interesting stuff. And we had the other use cases and so on. We had the secure data that was mentioned earlier on as well. That's some of our users here have got secure data problems, medical data problems as well. So these are chosen because they were a cross-section. We developed the multi-core architecture. We've developed the interoperability framework, and we developed the industry standards that we are publishing. So we've done this bit already. And actually, yeah, a good point to make here. Why is multi-tenant important? Well, we found when we started off with multiple systems, single tenancy type situations, that it didn't scale and it wasn't affordable. Having a deployed instance of a repository and a separate deployed instance of a preservation system for each institution or within a consortium or for each institution as a whole, it made it totally unaffordable in terms of the infrastructure costs, the development costs, the maintenance costs and so on. It didn't allow us to have the cross-institutional collaboration. It didn't allow us to think about clever things we might want to do down the line in the future. There was talk about, in Chris's talk about data mining. Imagine if you could data mine across multiple data sets, which you could do in a multi-tenancy type solution. Very difficult to do in separate silos. other aspects of multi-tenancy that are made possible and are important as far as multi-tenancy is concerned is the universal data model. If it's multi-tenancy, the concept of being able to use a universal data model works. If you have separate silos, separate data models, doesn't work. Single management interface, interoperable. We've come across most of the things in discussions already. One of the things we discovered relatively recently is that Samvera, which is one of our original repository solutions, can't deliver what we need. We started off, and there was one slide in Chris's presentation with multiple repositories and multiple preservation solutions. We've now down to Figshare, and we haven't got a name for the new version. Let's call it the JISC repository, based on a Samvera style, but not Samvera itself. We're now developing that ourselves. We have the reporting layer, and we have the two preservation solutions underneath. We have Archive and Archivematica. There's Matthew there at the back, and Preservica. We have done the experiment, and we've tried all the bits and pieces, and we found out that nothing on the market was truly multi-tenanted. Separate clusters were needed. It didn't, at the time we were doing this, nothing could actually provide the solution we needed. Now, that's not to say that nothing will do, that will be the case forevermore. There are other solutions that are starting to appear, which might be truly multi-tenanted. We haven't found them yet, but there are thoughts around. So, as I mentioned just now, if it's not multi-tenanted, it doesn't scale, and it's not economic, which is why I'm going down that path. So where we are now, I mentioned we've done the rocket science bit, core architecture, we've done the multi-tenanted database, so the actual core is multi-tenanted. Interoperability layer is there, the data model, proof of concept, we've done all that. And the front-end design, we're currently working on this, the multi-tenanted user interface. That's a mouthful and a half, isn't it? Further workflows and integrations with other open access services. We've done a lot of integrations with HCI systems, with Chris systems and so on. And we collaborated with repositories, ePrints, Pure Adapters, DSpace. Most of these names should be familiar with you, for you. And if there are other people you think should out there, see me after school again. We're happy and willing to work with everyone, but more to the point, we're actually publishing the APIs for these things to make sure that anyone can plug in, so we're not just tied to the few. On the repository side of things, it's the same slide, so let's go on to the next one. Chris mentioned briefly open access and working globally as the way forward to the future. I left the slide in to show you some of the services that we are working on, and how those services are designed to be interoperable. And we are plugging into this aspect of it as well. So we're no, I mustn't say RDS anymore. The repository preservation service produced by JISC. That doesn't work either, does it? Well, the system is plugging into a family of related systems that allow for interoperability across the whole suite of JISC products. Oh, it says demo now. I've got to go for a live demo. Right, okay. Deep breath. I'm going to sit myself down for this bit and show you, hopefully, if the network holds out, how it works. So bear with me a second. Okay, now, as I mentioned before, we decided that Samvera didn't quite do what we wanted to do. However, we haven't quite got to the point where we developed a new front-end interface. So the demonstration I will show you is based on Samvera into Preservica. It highlights some of the problems with Samvera, in particular in terms of the interface, but hopefully it should give an idea of the type of semi-automatic workflow we're talking about, where the researcher does as little as possible, the administrator does as little as possible, and everything happens under the bonnet. That's the theory. So just log in as a researcher. And here's a login I prepared earlier, as they say. And this is a typical researcher dashboard, showing what they've been doing recently. Now, there are better dashboards around, but what I want to show you is a live deposit of some data. So clicking on the share your work. And here we have quite a long form of the basic information to go in there. And notice here on the right we have various compulsory parts to tick, visibility, but also requirements, things you haven't done, exclamation marks. We need to make sure that those things are done. So I've got a work here that I've identified earlier. Now I nicked this from an open access repository. So purely for demonstration purposes, it's not going to be going anywhere apart from onto our service, our demo service. As you might expect, put in a name, and I'm going to put a description in as well. Some of these fields obviously are compulsory. It would be rather pointless putting something up without a name. A description, again, it needs to have a description. Resource type. Now, this one, is this going to be a data set? I'm going to go for a very simple one. And moving down the page. People. Now, I'm going to claim this one. I'm going to plagiarize and pretend I've actually done something with this, but then it's me. So I'm going to put my name in here. This is where you can see my terrible typing live on screen, being streamed to the world. And email address, because I'm like that. And my role, it doesn't have plagiarist in there, so I'm going to be a depositing user. Okay, and identifiers. Now this screen is slightly squashed because of the projector, so you can't see clearly what it says there. It does say please select, and I'm going to go for my ORCID, which is here somewhere. It's like watching paint dry, isn't it? There's my ORCID. Right, date, compulsory field, obviously. And rights, now I'm going to be very generous. I'm going to make this one 0. And rights holder, don't need to bother that because it's CC0. Rights statement, don't need to bother with that. Access type, I go make it open. And organization, I'm going to be JISC. And I can choose an identifier, and it's multiple identifier types, same as it's multiple types for the person identifier. In this case, I'm going to go for, let me see, what the hell, let's put that in there, publisher, and can put the organization identifier here. As in select, I'm just go for a URL, because I know what the URL is. Okay, notice as I go along, I've still got those exclamation marks there. I'm going to get rid of one of them now. I've agreed the deposit agreement. Hey, checked it. I've described the work. Now, as you're probably thinking, what about the data? Yes, that would be useful to put some data in there as well. I've described it, so let's put data in there. Files. And hopefully I can find the data. Yay, here we are. And I'm going to put in a spreadsheet and a PDF. And put them in there. I'm going to do a drag and drop because I'm brave. And there we go. Uploading. Quite fast, yes. While it's uploading, this is where we think, oh gosh, I wish I'd had slightly faster connection, but never mind. 32.23 megabytes. So this is basically all the research it needs to do. That's in the entirety of the deposit process, up to the point where they send it off to someone in the admin team to approve or disapprove or send it back, whatever. Luckily, the second half of this is slightly faster because it's a smaller file. So that one is up there now. I have to blather on now for a few more seconds until the last one gets up there. There she goes. Right, our 2 files are up there. I could delete them, I'm not going to. And then I deposit down here by clicking on save. And that's it. That's deposited as far as into the admin system. So I'm now going to, there we are. And it's saying it's not currently available because it hasn't completed the approval process. So I'm going to become an administrator now. Log out and log in. And again, luckily I prepared the login earlier because the password on that one is a terrible one to remember. Dashboard, quite similar to conceptually the dashboard you saw on the other side. Obviously more administrator focused, and I'm going to review the submissions. So here we have London's Economic Outlook Spring 2018, just there, 31st of the 5th. So I'm going to click on that one and have a quick look at it. And for the sake of saving time I'm going to agree that's perfect. I've got a wonderful researcher who's doing exactly what they need to do. So I'm just going to approve it and submit. And that's it. It's now winging its way towards the preservation system and doing all the preservation actions. And if I look over on the preservation system here and do a refresh on the page, we might even see it running. If not running, it'll be completed. So here we go. Let's go back to my list of completed ones. Fast, fast, fast. Auto ingest 1342 was the last one I did. No, it's not the current one. It must be running, because look at the running ones. Or is it waiting? As the time-honored Blue Peter fashion, one I prepared earlier. Right, while it's thinking about it, I'll show you the result. I did this morning, it took 30 seconds. But anyway, this is the type of thing you might see on the ingest. So you can see it's done all the actions, identified, import, the lot. So ultimately, you as the administrator, if you're particularly interested in the underlying preservation processes, yes, you could go in there and do things in the preservation system. But if you're not interested in that aspect of things, you want to know it happens, then all you need to look at is the administrator interface over here. So that's what it looks like currently with something that we have rejected in terms of our current front end. So the back end we're looking at, down by here, sorry, the back end, the alternative front end we're looking at, this is some conceptual work that's been done by Acasta for us. And I have been told to say immediately that this is not design work, this is conceptual work, because it doesn't look like it's going to look, and it's not all fancy graphics and so on. This is just wireframing, but an interactive wireframe. This is how we propose an interface might look in the future using the alternative repository front end that we are looking at doing. And it's pretty straightforward. Step one, describe, license restrictions. Again, if I slide down, it's quite difficult to get on this one, but anyway, whoops. Slide down. Now, all this stuff is currently in flux, so if there are particular things that are necessary there, then we can add them. So this is your chance to influence that aspect of it as well. The upload process, again, pretty straightforward things, what you might expect to see, giving you sequential process, drop files, click to upload, related works, and so on. So that's basically the live demo part of it. So I get to stand up now and carry on with the presentation. I'm so pleased that mostly worked, because let's get that showing now. So that's where we're at. So the next thing is the future. Well, we've looked at adding things to the current RDSS system. One of the things that many of you have seen before, and obviously I don't expect you to try and read that, is we have a data model that underpins the entire conceptual process. This is published openly on GitHub. It's flexible, it's changeable, and it is changing to reflect the way things are developing within the system. Dom, who should have been here today, this is his work, and he says it is not a data model, one model to rule them all. It is a flexible model that underpins RDSS. So it should be something that is usable and appropriate. We're currently working on further integrations as well. Now, we had some questions earlier on, James, wasn't it, about secure processes and so on. Simon, James? Oh, Simon. It's too early in the morning, it really is. Some of the things we're looking at here are just share that ways of transferring files across the Janet network that are totally encrypted. We're also looking at data vault style processes where if you've got something you don't know what to do with, put the blob into data vault and deal with it another time. Active data storage, I'll come back to that. Additional third-party systems, as I've said again and again as we go along, we're publishing the specs, we're publishing the APIs so other third-party systems can plug in and do things. We're not trying to make this a closed system, we're trying to make it as open as possible. We're working with DMP Online to the holy grail of data management plans that are machine readable and actionable. That's something that is on the roadmap further down the line to work with and make sure that that is integrated into the system. Tiered storage I'll come back to in a minute. And certification, that's one of my favorite bugbears. We are currently working on ISO 27001 in terms of storage. We're currently working on Dataset Approval, which is called something else now, and I forget, someone help me out here. What's it called now, the DSA? Dataset Approval, it's called something else. Sorry, no. And we're looking, I'm looking at ISO 16363. John is saying not for a long time. Apparently it's quite expensive. And obviously the various parts of GIST are ISO 27, ISO 2000, no, ISO 9001, isn't it? Yeah, I keep getting those mixed up. So we're looking at certification as well, and all the appropriate certifications for the repositories, for the safe storage data. The NHS toolkit for NHS type data, everything you can think of. If it's a demand for it, we're going to try and do it because, and we're building this in from scratch as well. So we are not plugging in something on top. This is because we've now gone down the route of developing our own repository side of things. It allows us to have all this stuff built in from scratch. Make sure that the data is encrypted at rest, in transit, and all that sort of stuff. Make sure that only the appropriate data is exposed. I forgot to mention actually when I was doing the demonstration part, individual files can have individual data access controls placed on them. So if you want to publish part of your data set, the report, but not the underlying data because it's sensitive, you can do that. So that's what we're working on in terms of further developments there. I wanted to mention this because this is an example of something I mentioned earlier on, collaboration across the whole of the, how can I put this, institutions, across providers of proprietary systems, across providers of open systems. This is an example of something that's being facilitated through RDSS. No, I said it again, damn. Through our system. The Preservation Action Registry is a way of sharing knowledge and processes and workflows across different systems, particularly in relation to preservation workflows is what we're working on this as far as this is concerned. So, for instance, Preservica has a whole system of what you do with a certain type of file in a certain situation to achieve a certain end, a workflow. Archivematica has a similar concept, what you do with a certain file in a certain process, but there's no way, up until now, there's been no way of exchanging that information across different systems. We've worked on a proof of concept and a conceptualization of how it might work. Matthew, just down the end of there, has written a paper which has been accepted at IPRES about how such an exchange of information might work. It allows the collective knowledge of the sector to be shared. It allows people to pick up the common ways of doing things, the right way of doing things, the best knowledge way of doing things, and exchange that information. And it's designed to be system independent, so it's exchange of information in a standardized format. It's early days yet, but we have high hopes of how this might develop. And Matthew's got loads of detail if you need to work out or you need questions about how the underlying processes might work, which is why I'm glad he's in the room today, because it means I don't have to say, I'll find out for you. I just say, ask Matthew. But this is an example of the collective possibilities that the disk system allows us to achieve. We can achieve things across open source and proprietary. We can achieve things across the wider sector. Oh, wrong button. Just tier storage. This has come up a couple of times. Storage cost, apart from people cost, storage cost is one of the most expensive parts of these systems. And as you probably know, there are different types of storage with associated costs. Everything from your USB stick, no, don't go there, through to your spinning disk, through to your cloud storage, through to your tape and so on. The just tiered storage service is something that allows, in theory, all those different types of storages to be treated as a single storage object, and the actual storage underlying them to be optimized according to whether it needs to be fast access, slow access, dark archive, whatever. It allows us, in theory, to have a system whereby the economies of scale of purchasing cloud storage in bulk, or tape storage in bulk, or tin in bulk, can be passed on to the smaller user. We're currently in the situation whereby we have nearly finished the procurement process. In theory, procurement process finishes next July. Might have slipped slightly because I haven't been involved recently in the current decision making, but we're aiming to have a disk tiered storage service open and available for business by the end of the year. The reason I mention this as well is the disk preservation and repository service is designed to be storage agnostic after the initial repository actions. So if you need to plug in an alternative storage source, such as tiered storage, the disk tiered storage service, or your own local tin for the preservation side of it, or something else, in theory that's possible. Again, something that Chris mentioned briefly, a national research platform. I just realised I'm not behind the table. Sorry, Sarah. The JISC National Research Platform. This is again conceptually, it seems to be the logical conclusion of all this shared service and so on. Is something that can be applied nationally for multiple universities and funded nationally. But anyway, that's early days on that one. We have Neil here in the building. We have worked on providing somewhere to put things, but what we haven't really got a clear idea on is what you should put there and what you should keep. There's been a lot of work done in the past about the cost of curation, but not so much done on the needs of curation. And again, I'm so glad Neil's in the room. So if you want to find out more about this, ask Neil. He knows. Obviously, he's running the project. So. We're also working on an underlying toolkit to go alongside the shared service. Now this has all sorts of information from how to make the case, links to alternative sources of information. It has also information about costing. It has information about what is preservation, what is the repository, and so on. And it's designed to be a living documents the wrong words, a living website that is continually updated and showing not necessarily the state of the art, but the current consensus about how these things should work. So an information resource. And as you always know, I bang on about money. We are particularly interested in making sure that not only ourselves have a sustainable business case, but the people wanting to use this service have a sustainable business case. So we're trying to help users build their own cases, help users make the case internally for RDM in the first place, for a shared service, showing them how and where they could collaborate, making efficient, cost-effective systems, and making it as open as possible. So that's RDSS current and what we're planning to do in the future. We have talked about quite a lot of things today, and this is just decided diamond, don't mind, that's on the last slide anyway. So I think I've covered some of the points that were raised, but I think now is probably the time to open the floor for questions and thoughts about what else you want to see in there and what you think's wrong. or right about, it just died, I mean, the battery went. What do you think is wrong or right about the current system? And of course, let me know if you've got any ideas about names. I really must need a name. So, questions, please.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm just going to try and moderate a wee bit of kind of Q&A based on that. So, who would like to go first?
Great, I'm off to Wales.
Neil.
Neil.
It's nice and easy, wasn't it, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay. Couple of questions, if I could, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you put up towards the end there, you're looking to help users build their business cases. Can I ask you to explain a little bit more what that help would entail, what you envisage?
We have a whole series of resources around making the case to senior decision makers, including video presentations, including slides and so on. But we're also prepared to go on site with you and find out what it is you're currently spending and what it is you could spend on research. We have a product that's currently in pilot, the Research X-ray. Some of you may have heard of the financial X-ray service that GIST has already, which is whereby we have a team of technically aware accountants, that's probably the best way to describe them, who go into a university or other institution and basically look at all the invoices and apportion costs across the various departments and activities. We're looking to extend that into a research-focused side of things, of what the cost of doing research, that would allow people to get a baseline cost of what it's currently costing them to do things, and then show them how and where by using a service, not necessarily our service, but a service, how it might save them money or make it more cost-effective or allow them to do more. So that is not a free service, although currently in pilots people are getting for free. So we're providing that sort of thing. I mean, we're also, what else do you need?
Well, I was asking, it's not for me to say as a consultant, it would be for the others in the room, really. I was just interested in what would be involved in that and what was on offer.
Yeah, we're more than happy to go in and discuss with you what could be your requirements and what those requirements might cost and how to make the case for those requirements.
Okay. And the next question I had was, you put up certification. I was just wondering what the timeline is that you have for certification.
We're next in the queue for 27001 at JISC. That means that learning analytics is first in the queue at the moment. I believe they're nearly there. So I would like to see the certification in place before the end of the year.
And by that, do you mean certification of 27001, yeah, which is the security one?
Yeah, JISC, yeah.
And then for data seal of approval?
DSA is probably the same time scale. That's more of a self-certification process anyway.
Okay. And final question, if I may, Samvera. What was it doing, if you like? It seemed to be the interface front end to Preservica. Did it have a separate thing as well? Am I missing something? Samvera is the repository aspect of it. You don't need to have a preservation system on the back. So if you didn't have the preservation system on the back, it would just stop there and allow you to publish and make available through your discovery channels or our discovery channels information you put into the repository according to the access levels you set. So it was acting as an interface onto the repository. We're now looking at more of a black box repository solution with a decent user interface on the front. Okay. Right, thank you.
So there are a couple of other questions. Go right here first.
Just to clarify, Samvera and this in-house thing that you're developing now, does that have any front end?
Yes.
Like for end users?
Yes.
Okay.
That last thing I showed before the thing died, the wireframes, that's a conceptual front end for it. It'll look a lot sexier when it comes out.
Wasn't
the blue screen?
The blue screen, but wasn't that a deposit interface? But I mean, like a discovery interface for.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Discovery interface. As far as the end user is concerned, there isn't particularly a discovery interface, but it plugs into discovery systems through APIs. So once you deposit into the repository, then discovery is semi-automatic.
Okay, through a Chris or some other.
It would be through. I'll help you out, Chris. What's the name of the discovery? That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, essentially, we're looking to plug into anything and everything.
Okay.
So as long as it shares the appropriate data model and APIs, then go for it, yeah.
Okay. I had another
Go for
follow-up
it, yeah.
question, which might be a bit nasty.
I
so
love nasty questions.
you were
Yeah.
saying you're looking for working on the sustainability of the service. At this point, like, how long is it guaranteed for? You know?
At the moment, we've passed stage gate review in terms of internal business cases being made to say, yes, we are taking this to service.
Okay.
So, and that part of that stage gate review involved saying, we're not doing that anymore, we're going to do it this way. We're dropping that, we're just doing this. So yes, we're at the point whereby we are transitioning to service, end Q3, beginning Q4.
And in terms of like how, you know, there's how long are you guaranteed to be in service for?
What's the life cycle of a service?
Yeah, exactly.
Short answer is I don't know.
Okay.
Long answer is we're not going to do a Google and just drop it without any notice at all. And as with all of these things, we provide ways of getting data out. Should something disaster go on, we guarantee that we will allow you to get your data out. We will facilitate getting the data out. There may even be an escrow service involved as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So it wasn't asked at all, was it?
Can I just crystallise then 2 or 3 topics in my own head? So timeline. Some people in the room are already involved in this and they're in a kind of advanced position in terms of getting to play with it. At what point will organisations not currently involved be able to have a demonstration of their own, try it for themselves?
As in an online demonstrator, have a go?
Yep.
I don't know if we're going to have an online demonstrator have a go, but we are prepared from now to go and talk to people and show them and tweak things. We are already talking to people who are not pilots and showing them things and discussing them their requirements.
Okay, so there's an open invitation therefore at this point now.
You want to know more?
Yep.
I want someone to come on and talk about it and show you or ask questions and probe. Yes.
Can I ask a second question then, which is not unrelated to the sustainability one? It's maybe an awkward one, but price point. Do you have any sense? So I'm guessing institutions will pay you for this. And
the $64 million question.
Yeah.
It won't be $64 million.
I mean, it's a difficult question, and I know it will vary. I mean, the answer may well be it depends, that would be a sensible answer, you know. But if you could maybe give us some idea of what the characteristics of the dependence are,
the characteristics
that might help.
are well, we're looking at ways of banding outputs in terms of A, the data storage requirements. That's one aspect of it. B, research income as a way of banding. If you're a high intensive research and have loads of research income, it's likely going to cost you more than, say, a smaller institution. We're also looking at an offering which might be more cost-effective for a consortia type product, type situation, whereby you get all the bells and whistles, but you're part of a regional consortium, for instance. Again, that might be cheaper. But it depends, as I say, storage, research income, so the amount you're going to use it. And what else can I say? You know, there's the 2 key factors.
Well, that's useful to know, even that itself.
More questions? You're dying to ask one, I can see. Yeah.
Right here.
Oh. Yeah.
There's, I think, 17 pilots. Are they all going to be customers?
At the moment, the majority is. No one said no yet. Put it that way. So, and I'm not going to close off the door until you know. I can't say the fat lady sings anymore, can you? That's very non-PC. So until the large operatic person sings.
Can I just ask a question about possible change of software as people want to migrate possibly onto your new SIS or whatever you want to call it? So will there be help in migrations in that way?
Yes.
And do you anticipate that a lot of people will actually change their repository in order to kind of align with your offering?
Yes, we're looking at adapters for the key Chris systems. We see this as the starting point, but ultimately, yeah, anything, if you need to plug into it, we will be helping with that. Now that could be part of the variability in terms of the price. If you're standard and plug straight in, fine. If there's a certain amount of development work required, then there might be an additional upfront cost.
There's quite a few more questions, so we'll just keep the questions going.
Pat Liebertraut from University of Exeter. Can I just ask what metadata schema are supporting the service? Do you have any idea?
Dom was the person to ask that one, and he's not here. The data model is being designed to be data schema agnostic, but what was based on, do you remember, Chris, what it was based on? No.
I mean, it's fair to say we can get that answer
get
to
that
you.
Answer for you, yes. Yeah, I'll look at the recording afterwards and get details, but yes, but Dom was the person to answer that one.
Wasn't drawn out a blank page.
No.
Based on theirs over existing schemas.
Yeah.
Designed to be compatible with those.
Yes. And not one schema to rule them all. No, Dom doesn't like that. More.
Keep going.
Hi, you talked a lot about APIs and interoperability. One of our mantras for our repository is to never have a researcher have to type in information they've already put in another system.
That's the idea, yeah.
So does this mean that it will pull in information from our CRIS system about existing researchers, their collaborators, funded projects, that kind of thing, and then push back into our CRIS system so we can expose via our portal?
Pull only at the moment.
It will do pull.
Pull, yeah, and we're not looking to push back at the moment because of the various problems associated with that. But yes, our mantra is also key once and never again. I just made it up. And we're plugging into, we have adapters for many of the standard CRISs around, and we'll also adapters for HE systems and grant systems as well. So try and pull things in as much as possible, so you don't have to go and look it up on that piece of paper you stuck in the bottom drawer somewhere with the DP, the data management plan that you printed out and never used again, and so on.
There's quite a lot of questions. I'm happy to keep that going. We've got one at the corner there. No? Yes? No? Go on then.
Oh.
So just to follow up on the pulling data in from other systems, in the demo you entered the ORCID ID.
Yep.
Does that mean if, for example, the CRIS system had an ORCID integration, that wouldn't then need to be entered in the
theory,
user
yes,
interface?
That's one of the ultimate aims, yes, to plug into ORCID and pull stuff out of that way, yeah.
Okay, sure. Currently you're entering it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
a demo system, and I don't exist anywhere.
No, of course. I just wanted to understand how
I've
it's
got
working.
one publication to my name or something, that's it. Yeah.
Was there a question over here? Well, okay, we'll have one more question, then I'm going to just have one or two discussion points. We'll keep two more questions.
So I'm not sure if this is something you mentioned earlier, but there was something on your slides about active data management. And so I wondered if you could just go into a little more detail about how you saw that linking in with this system, which is as yet unnamed.
At the moment, active data management is not included, but we're looking at it as a potential way forward, something to do in the future. So you have your one system to keep all your data in rather than everything else. Obviously, there's a large market for active data management, and so it would be foolish not to look at it. But it's not, I would probably correct in saying it's not in this year's roadmap, at least.
Thank you.
And then we'll take the last question over here. And then one or two discussion things still to do with you. So,
Yeah.
But there's been quite lively questions. So.
How will it work with issuing persistent identifiers like DOIs in terms of how much control will we have over the DOI suffix, and who would be responsible under our current institutional contracts with British Library to mint DOIs for updating landing pages, for example, if that needed updating in the system, in the platform?
This sounds more like a Chris question possibly, but ultimately, if I understand correctly, your current minting DOI arrangements will be incorporated.
Right.
So we are not minting the DOIs. It's not a new place to start from. So on. Is that correct, Chris?
I can't just shake my head now and say we've been working with British Library. I don't know how much we've got it configured to be customizable we can find that out. But it will allocate DOIs.
Mm-hmm. But we're using yours, not ours, so to speak.
And sorry, Angus, did you have one last question?
Wait for the microphone.
DMP Online, you
Yep.
mentioned updating DMP Online. Can you explain what that means?
Well, we're looking at incorporating the updated version of DMP Online, pulling essentially information, possibly even using that information in useful ways. But yes, that's on the plan. And I believe, well, John is talking to someone on that one, and I'm not quite sure who he's talking to at your end, but probably Sarah, but not sure.
Okay, so this was supposed to be a discussion. We turned into a bit of a Q&A and we're giving
Yeah,
Paul
no
a grilling. It's supposed to be a bit more open discussion. Paul's doing very well, so I'm enjoying this. I don't know about you. I don't know about Paul. Let's very briefly, before we end, okay? I asked you 3 questions just after lunch, and you wrote down 3 answers. Do you know, the things which are going to change? I can't remember what they are. What does RDSS, what would you really look for? And I can't remember what the other one was. But what I want you to do just very briefly is to go back to where you made those notes. Okay, so Paul's given us a presentation now of what the RDSS is going to contain and what it's going to involve. And it'd just be interesting, just for a moment, to go back to the things that you were concerned about before you heard the presentation, and to see whether there's anything that just jumps out immediately at you to say, that wasn't there, or something that jumps out the page and thinks, actually that's been done really well. I can see now the answer there. Does anyone have anything they want to share from that experience, which of course you could do now, or we could share later if you want to follow up in discussion, but it sounds to me like you've answered all their questions,
Paul. Not a
Paul.
single question left. Good. If you do have any questions, though, do feel free to email me afterwards. I believe my email address is published somewhere. If not, then William's got it or Sarah's got it.
Yep.
And it's on my business cards as well, so I've got some cards with me as well. Old-fashioned paper things.
Old-fashioned paper. Good stuff. Well, listen, Paul, thank you very much for your presentation. We should give Paul a round of applause, I think, for that.
Lines then.
So you're off the hook for now, so thank you, and also thank you to the colleagues who are behind all this work as well, Dom and all the other people who have contributed to that work, because it's evolved over the year that we've been involved with this process. So it's really encouraging, really good to see.